The Limestone Ridge didn't forgive mistakes. Chief Warrant Officer Sloan Fletcher had been part of the geology for 9 hours now. Her body was a statue carved from dust in discipline. The ghillie suit draped over her frame looked like the scrub brush that dotted the Afghan mountainside. Even the flies had stopped landing on her. Through the Schmidt and Bender scope mounted on her Barrett MRAD, the valley floor shimmered in waves of heat. The target compound sat 2,000 meters away. Mud brick walls, reinforced rebar, a scar on an already scarred landscape. Sloan's heart rate held steady at 47 beats per minute, an unnatural calm. The kind of calm that came from 6,000 hours behind a rifle. The kind that separated the living from the dead. Her finger rested alongside the trigger guard, not on the trigger, never on the trigger until the world narrowed down to that final exhale. Status, the voice crackled in her earpiece. Colonel Vincent Brennan, 15 meters behind her, hidden in a depression between two boulders. His voice carried the gravel of age and cigarettes he'd quit 20 years ago. 3 tangos on patrol, Sloan whispered. Her voice was barely a vibration in her throat. Pattern's lazy. They're not expecting company. Copy. HVT, arrival time? Intel said 1400. It's 1417. Maybe he got cold feet. Or maybe the intel's trash. Sloan shifted her weight by millimeters. The Barrett weighed 22 pounds loaded. Add the AN/PEQ-15 laser, the suppressor, the bipod. 27 pounds of precision engineering pressing into the same patch of earth for 9 hours. Being a woman in the SEAL community meant proving yourself twice. Once to earn the trident, twice to keep it. Every day was an audition. Every shot was a referendum. Movement, Sloan said, her tone flattening to pure information. North Road, 2 vehicles, black SUVs. Brennan's voice sharpened. That's not local. Negative. Locals drive Toyotas. Sloan dialed the magnification up to 25 power. The image swam, then locked. Armored SUVs. Heavy suspension sagging under ballistic plating. Run-flat tires. Tinted windows that cost more than most Afghans made in a decade. This wasn't a tribal warlord meeting his supplier. This was a corporate transaction. Falcon 1, I have eyes on the package, Sloan relayed. The radio protocol was muscle memory. Falcon 1 was Brennan. Falcon 2 was her. Falcon 3 and 4 were petty officers Rhett Callahan and Clay Harrison, positioned on the southern approach, 300 meters downslope. The lead SUV stopped. Dust billowed. The doors opened like the wings of some armored insect. Men stepped out, not in flowing robes, not in the mismatched fatigues of local fighters. These men wore tan tactical pants, moisture-wicking polo shirts. They moved with the economy of professionals, checking sectors, holding suppressed M4 carbines at the low ready, scanning with the kind of discipline that came from Blackwater or Triple Canopy or one of the other private military corporations that had sprouted like mushrooms after 2 decades of war. Identify, Brennan ordered. Sloan focused on the man stepping out of the rear seat. Western, clean-shaven, Oakley sunglasses that reflected the sun like mirrors. He carried a brushed aluminum briefcase like it contained launch codes. Negative on local fighters, Sloan reported. The cold knot in her stomach tightened. Gear is U.S. manufacturer. Crye Precision plate carriers. Ops Corps high-cut helmets. Sir, these look like contractors. Silence on the radio. 3 seconds. An eternity in combat time. Contractors? Brennan's voice had lost its tactical cool. Out here? Sloan watched through the crosshairs as the Western man shook hands with the target. Khalid Nazari, the high-value target. The man who supposedly ran chemical weapons through the tribal areas. The man they'd inserted 12 hours ago to eliminate. Except the American was smiling, clapping Nazari on the shoulder, laughing like they were old friends reuniting at a college football game. They're shaking hands, Sloan narrated. Her voice stayed flat, but her mind was racing. The exchange is happening. Command said we were hitting a terrorist cell buying chemical precursors. Why are Americans selling it to them? Falcon 1 to Havoc Base. Brennan's transmission cut across a command frequency. We have visual on U.S. nationals in the target zone. Requesting ROE clarification. Over. Static hissed. The kind of silence that meant someone at Bagram Air Base or JSOC headquarters was making a phone call to someone who made more money than God. Sloan kept her eye on the scope. The American contractor was pointing toward the compound. Two more men were rolling out a dolly. On it sat three 55-gallon drums. Soviet markings, faded Cyrillic stenciling that Sloan had studied in chemical weapons identification training. VX, nerve agent, or sarin, or something equally capable of turning a human nervous system into a seizure factory. Havoc Base, this is Falcon 1. Do we have authorization for engagement? Over. More static, then a voice. Flat, bureaucratic, the kind of voice that attended PowerPoint briefings and never saw the blood. Falcon 1, stand by for guidance. Over. Stand by. The two words that meant someone was covering their ass. Sloan watched the insurgent point toward the ridge, not directly at her position, but generally in the right direction. One of the tactical contractors raised a pair of Steiner binoculars. They're scanning, Sloan warned. We're burning daylight. If we don't hit them now, the deal goes through and that briefcase disappears. Havoc, we need guidance now. Brennan's voice carried an edge. 38 years in the teams had taught him the smell of a setup. The contractor with the binoculars swept the ridgeline. Sloan could see his lips moving, talking into a radio. The image was crystal clear at this magnification. She could count the wrinkles in his shirt. The glare off her scope lens would be invisible at this range. Probably. The sun was high. The angle was shallow. Probably safe. The contractor stopped sweeping. His binoculars locked onto her sector. Falcon 1, the contractor is looking right at my position, Sloan said. Her voice stayed calm, but her pulse ticked up to 53. I think he's got scope glare. Havoc Base, requesting immediate. The sound wasn't a gunshot. It was the sharp, supersonic crack of a bullet arriving before its sound. The air 6 inches above Sloan's head split open. The shock wave was a physical slap. Compromised, Sloan abandoned the whisper. Taking fire. The valley floor erupted. The lazy patrol vanished into cover like they'd been rehearsing for this moment. Because they had. The whole thing was a trap. A heavy machine gun opened up from the compound. A DSHK, 12.7 millimeter rounds. The same caliber as the Browning M2, except this one was Soviet-made and sounded like a god coughing. The limestone ridge exploded. Chunks of rock the size of fists vaporized into powder. The impacts walked toward Sloan's position like the footsteps of an invisible giant. Impact 1, 10 meters left. Impact 2, 8 meters. Impact 3, 6 meters. Engage! Engage! Brennan's voice roared over the chaos. Sloan settled the crosshairs on the contractor who'd fired. He was moving toward the SUV. A difficult shot. Moving target, 400 meters. Downhill angle meant the bullet would impact high. Compensate by aiming low. She didn't think about politics. She didn't think about why Americans were shooting at Americans. She thought about the physics. Breath in, breath out. Pause between heartbeats. Squeeze. The Barrett kicked into her shoulder. A brutal shove. 11 pounds of recoil. The muzzle brake did its job, venting gas to the sides, but the rifle still wanted to climb. Sloan rode it, stayed in the scope. 400 meters away, the contractor's head snapped back. Pink mist vaporized in the dry air, the kind of mist that used to be a brain. He dropped like someone had cut his strings. Splash one, Sloan stated. Her voice was devoid of emotion. Emotion got you killed. She cycled the bolt, the spent brass ejected, smoking, tumbling end over end down the rocks. Havoc, this is Falcon 1. Brennan was screaming into the radio now. We are engaged. Troops in contact. Requesting immediate CAS at grid November Kilo 449273. Over. Sloan lined up her second shot, but as she scanned the chaos below, she saw something that made her blood freeze. The man with the briefcase wasn't running. He was standing in the open, looking directly at the ridge, and he was smiling. He tapped his earpiece, like he was listening to a joke, like he found something amusing about watching his security team get shot. Why is he smiling? Then the radio crackled with the message that would doom them all. Falcon 1, this is Havoc Base. The voice was cold, clinical. Air support is negative. I repeat, negative. All close air support assets are scrubbed. You are black on the grid. Out. The transmission ended. Dead air. Brennan's voice came through on the team frequency. Not the command net, just the four of them. Say again, Havoc. We have 30 hostiles maneuvering on our flank. We need a clearing run. Danger close. Now. Negative, Falcon. You are black on the grid. Out. Black on the grid. Off the map. Erased. Like they'd never existed. The link died. Silence followed. Heavier than the mortar round that screamed overhead and pulverized the rock face 3 meters to Sloane's left. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She just exhaled slowly. Watching her breath mist against the scope's rubber eye cup, the dust from the mortar impact settled on her ghillie suit like funeral ash. Impact 4. A bullet chipped limestone beside her cheek. Rock fragments stung her skin, drew blood. Impact 5. Dirt sprayed into her ear. The sound was deafening. Fletcher! Brennan's voice cracked over the comms, breathless, furious. They just hung us out to die. Sloane adjusted the elevation turret. 2 clicks up, 1 click left for the crosswind. Her heart rate was back down to 49 beats per minute. The world had narrowed to simple mathematics. Wind speed, range, bullet drop, Coriolis effect. She wasn't fighting for a flag anymore. She was fighting the math. Impact 6, Impact 7, Impact 8. The rounds were getting closer. Whoever was on that DSHK knew how to walk fire onto a target. Falcon 3, Falcon 4, status, Brennan barked. Taking effective fire, Callahan's voice, strained. They've got us pinned. Chief, what's the call? Harrison, young, scared, first combat deployment. Sloane made the call. Violence of action. We push or we die on this rock. It was a suicide order. Everyone knew. Staying on the ridge meant getting picked apart by that heavy machine gun. The only cover was inside the compound, inside the enemy's fortress. But Sloane had learned a long time ago that the only way through hell was forward. She slammed a fresh magazine into the Barrett's magwell. 10 rounds. Make them count. Moving! Callahan and Harrison vaulted over the ridgeline, sliding down the loose scree like human avalanches, dust and rocks and the sound of bullets snapping past their heads. Sloane didn't move. Not yet. She was the anchor. If she panicked, they died. She focused on the DSHK gunner, 400 meters down. The muzzle flash was a consistent strobe, like a deadly metronome. Breath. Pause. Squeeze. The rifle kicked. Down in the valley, the gunner's torso turned into red mist. The heavy machine gun fell silent. Gun down, Sloane announced. Displacing. She collapsed the bipod, slung the 27-pound rifle across her back, drew her MK-18 carbine, 11.5-inch barrel, suppressor adding another 6 inches. The weapon of choice for close-quarters battle. Then she threw herself off the ledge. The descent was a controlled fall. Shale sliced into her palms through her gloves. Bullets snapped the air around her. Angry hornets. But these weren't the erratic sprays of panic fighters. This was suppressed, accurate, single-shot fire. The contractors were bracketing her. shifting fire sectors with professional discipline. They fight like us, Sloan realized. Maybe better. She hit the valley floor and rolled to absorb the impact. Came up running toward the mud brick wall where Callahan was prepping a breaching charge. The air here was thick with dust and cordite, the smell of gunpowder and fear. "Charge set," Callahan yelled, pressing his body flat against the wall. Big man, farm strong, Virginia accent. "Fire in the hole!" The explosion didn't just blow the door. It sucked the oxygen out of Sloane's lungs. The concussion wave punched her in the chest like an invisible fist. Before the debris settled, they were inside. Sloane followed Callahan through the fatal funnel. The world narrowed to the red dot of her EOTech holographic sight. "Room clear. Hallway. Contact front." Muzzle flashes erupted from a doorway on the left. The hallway turned into a kill zone. The sound was deafening, magnified by concrete walls into a sustained roar that made thought impossible. Sloane saw Harrison take a round to his plate carrier. He stumbled but kept firing, training overriding the physics of getting hit by a rifle bullet. Sloane peeled right, checking a side room, empty except for a table covered in maps and sat phones. She didn't stop to look. Her job was clearing sectors. "HVT is in the main room," Brennan's voice. He was moving past her, favoring his right side. When had he gotten hit? Brennan tossed a flashbang. The grenade clattered across the floor. Bang! Even with her eyes closed and hands over her ears, Sloane felt the pressure wave, saw the white flash through her eyelids. Brennan kicked the door and swung in. Then everything went wrong. There was no return fire, just a dull, wet thud, like a hammer hitting meat. Brennan spun back into the hallway. His hands were clutching his shoulder. Blood didn't drip. It sprayed, jetting out between his gloved fingers in rhythmic arterial pulses. Bright red, the color of oxygenated blood. "Man down," Sloane screamed. She grabbed Brennan by the drag handle on his plate carrier, hauling him back as bullets chewed up the doorframe where he'd been standing. "Harrison! Medic!" Callahan was in the doorway now, suppressing the room, firing blindly to keep heads down. Harrison was on Brennan in seconds, ripping open the medical kit. His hands were shaking. This wasn't training. This was real blood, real death. "It's the shoulder," Harrison hissed. His eyes were wide. "Jesus, Colonel, there's so much." "Tourniquet," Sloane barked. She was holding Brennan's weight. The old man was heavy. Dead weight, going into shock. Harrison wrapped the cat tourniquet high on Brennan's shoulder, cinched it tight. The arterial spray slowed to a trickle. Brennan's eyes were losing focus. He tried to speak, but only a wet gurgle came out. Pink froth bubbled past his lips. He gripped Sloane's wrist. His grip was fading, weakening by the second, but his eyes locked onto hers. Not with fear, with something else. Recognition, understanding. He tapped his radio with his free hand, then pointed toward the main room. Message received. "You're going to be fine, Colonel," Sloane lied. She didn't know if he was going to be fine, but that's what you told people when they were bleeding out. "Harrison, keep pressure on that shoulder." "Chief, we need to—" "Secure the room," Sloane interrupted. Her voice sounded alien to her own ears. Cold, sharp, command voice. "Callahan, frag it. Now." "But the Colonel—" "Do it!" Callahan pulled an M67 fragmentation grenade, pulled the pin, released the spoon, counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. He bolted into the room. The explosion shook dust from the ceiling. Sloane felt it through the floor. She stepped over Brennan's body, didn't look down. If she looked at the blood, she'd break. And broken things didn't survive. She raised her weapon and entered the smoke-filled room. The HVT was sitting behind a heavy oak desk. He wasn't armed. He wasn't hiding. He was calmly wiping dust off his sunglasses with a silk handkerchief. 2 dead contractors lay near the window, shredded by the fragmentation grenade. The room smelled like copper and burned powder. The man looked up at Sloane, unimpressed by the muzzle of the MK-18 pointed at his face. "You're late," the man said. His accent was American, East Coast, educated. "And you made a mess of my security detail." "On your knees," Sloan ordered. She stepped closer. "Hands behind your head." The man smiled. Slow, predatory. "Chief Warrant Officer Fletcher, isn't it?" Sloan froze. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The take-up on the Geisley trigger was crisp. 2 pounds of pressure from discharging a round into this man's face. "How do you know my name?" "I know all of you." The man stood slowly, hands visible, non-threatening, but the smile never left his face. "Did you really think you could just call for a helicopter and fly home?" He gestured to the radio on Sloan's chest rig. "Look at your comms unit, Chief." Sloan glanced down. The AN/PRC 152 radio. The display screen that should have been showing a green status light, it was black. Not searching for signal, not even powered on. Dead. "They didn't just deny air support," the man said softly. "They burned the frequency, wiped your crypto keys remotely." "You're not a rescue team anymore, Miss Fletcher." He adjusted his sunglasses, tucked the handkerchief back into his breast pocket. "You're a loose end." Outside, the sound of heavy engines grew louder. Not SUVs. Something bigger, heavier. The grinding growl of diesel engines and steel tracks. Armored personnel carriers. Sloan looked back toward the hallway. Brennan was still conscious, barely. Harrison had him propped against the wall. The tourniquet was holding, but the old man's face was gray. She looked back at the man behind the desk. "Who are you?" The man smiled wider. "You can call me Webb. Marcus Webb. I used to be like you, Navy SEAL. Then I realized patriotism doesn't pay the mortgage." He tilted his head. "Your Colonel Brennan trained me, 25 years ago. Did he ever mention me?" Sloan's mind raced. Webb. The name was familiar. Brennan had mentioned a student who washed out of the officer program, went private sector. "You sold us out." "I sold out?" Webb laughed. "Chief, your government sold chemical weapons to a warlord. I'm just the middleman. The vice president himself signed the authorization. You think you're the good guys here?" The building shook. A heavy caliber round punched through the exterior wall. Concrete dust rained down. "Callahan!" Sloan shouted. "How much ammo do we have left?" Callahan checked his magazine. 2 mags each, maybe 3. "And the claymores?" 2 M18A1s. Sloan keyed her radio, knowing no one at headquarters would answer. "Havoc Base, this is Falcon 2 actual. We have 1 urgent surgical. Package secured. Requesting immediate extraction. Over." Static. The empty hiss of a dead frequency. She tried the backup channel, the emergency frequency, the international distress net. Nothing. Sloan looked at Webb, at the smug smile, at the expensive suit that cost more than she made in a month. "Set the claymores at the door," she said quietly. "We're not leaving." The floor vibrated, rhythmic, growing stronger. The BTR-80 armored personnel carriers were close now. Sloan could hear the turrets traversing, the hydraulic whine of the 30mm autocannons rotating. Webb settled back into his chair, crossed his legs like he was waiting for a delayed flight at an airport. "You know," he said conversationally, "Colonel Brennan taught me that the most important thing in combat is knowing when you're beaten. Looks like he forgot to teach you that lesson." Sloan moved to the window, staying low, peeking through the shattered glass. 3 BTR-80s, spaced in a tactical formation, hull-down positions, using the terrain for cover, professional, disciplined. Behind them, at least 20 dismounts, contractors in matching kit, moving in fire teams, bounding overwatch. This wasn't a hastily organized pursuit. This was a deliberate assault. Planned, rehearsed. They'd been expected. Sloan pulled back from the window, looked at her team. Callahan was setting the claymores, facing inward toward the door. Anyone who breached would walk into 700 steel ball bearings traveling at 1,200 meters per second. Harrison was still working on Brennan. The old colonel's breathing was shallow, rapid, and Webb sat there, smiling. Sloan checked her rifle. 28 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber, 29 chances to make this count. She thought about her father, Colonel Garrett Fletcher, shot down over Kuwait in 1991. She'd been barely a year old, too young to have any memory of him at all. Only photographs remained. He died in the cockpit of an F/A-18, doing his duty, following orders. Now his daughter was about to die in a mud brick compound in Afghanistan, also following orders, also betrayed. The BTR autocannons opened fire, not at the compound, at the ridge where they'd been positioned, suppressing any possible reinforcements. 30-millimeter high-explosive rounds walked across the mountainside. Each impact was a thunderclap. Impact 9, Impact 10, Impact 11. Sloan counted them. A habit. The count kept her focused, kept her from thinking about the impossibility of their situation. "Chief." Harrison's voice was quiet. "Colonel wants to talk to you." Sloan moved to Brennan's side, knelt down. The old man's eyes were clearer now. The morphine Harrison had administered was working. "Fletcher," Brennan whispered. His voice was wet, damaged. "Your father faced this choice. Al-Busaya, 91. Sir, save your strength." "Listen." Brennan grabbed her hand, squeezed with what little strength remained. He was surrounded, no air support. They told him to surrender. "What did he do?" Brennan smiled, blood on his teeth. "He fought until the choppers came." "What if they don't come this time?" The old colonel's smile faded. He looked at the ceiling, at something only he could see. "Then we make them regret burning us." The first breach charge detonated against the door. The claymores hadn't been triggered yet. They were still outside. Testing, probing. Sloan stood, checked her rifle one more time, moved to a firing position by the window. Impact 12, Impact 13, Impact 14. The rounds were getting closer, more accurate. Whoever was calling fire was adjusting based on impact observation. She looked at Webb, still sitting, still smiling. "Last chance, Chief," Webb said. "Give me the radio codes. Tell them where the claymores are positioned. Walk out of here alive." Sloan didn't answer. She settled her cheek against the stock of her rifle, found her breathing rhythm. Webb sighed. "Your funeral?" "No," Sloan said quietly. "Yours." The second breach charge detonated, closer. The wall shook. And then Callahan's voice, calm despite everything. "They're stacking up. 30 seconds to breach." Sloan's finger moved to the trigger. Impact 15. Impact 16. Impact 17. The count continued. But Sloan Fletcher wasn't counting anymore. She was waiting. Waiting for the door to blow. Waiting for the moment when mathematics and violence would meet in a doorway. Waiting to see if Brennan was right, if the helicopters would come, or if this compound would be her tomb. The sun was setting outside, painting the Afghan sky in shades of purple and blood orange. Beautiful, like a bruise spreading across the heavens. Impact 18, Impact 19, Impact 20. The door exploded inward, and Chief Warrant Officer Sloan Fletcher went to work. The claymores detonated with a sound like the world tearing in half. 700 steel ball bearings per mine, 2 mines, 1,400 projectiles screaming through the fatal funnel at 4,000 feet per second. The sound of the incoming assault team was cut short, replaced by something wet and final. The kind of sound that didn't leave survivors. The blast wave knocked Sloan backward into the desk. Her ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. Dust billowed, thick and choking. She couldn't see 3 feet in front of her face, but she could move. "Go!" Sloan grabbed Webb by his expensive collar, hauled him upright. The man's smug smile was gone now, replaced by something closer to fear. "Callahan, Harrison, we're moving." "Where?" Callahan shouted. His voice sounded like it was coming through water. The blast had rattled everyone's hearing. Sloan pointed to the floor. The Soviet-era grate she'd spotted during the initial breach. The metal grill was old, rusted, but underneath it was darkness. A tunnel. The Soviets built supply routes under these compounds. 80s, Cold War infrastructure. She kicked the grate, once, twice. The rusted bolts snapped. "We go down, or we die up here." Brennan was being dragged by Harrison. The old colonel's face was gray as concrete, but his eyes were open. Aware. "Good eye, Fletcher," Brennan whispered. "Knew those intelligence briefings would pay off." The BTR autocannons opened up again. 30-millimeter rounds chewed through the walls like they were cardboard. Chunks of concrete the size of basketballs exploded inward. The compound was being systematically demolished. Sloan dropped through the grate first. 10-foot drop. She landed in ankle-deep water that smelled like rot and chemicals. Her weapon lights snapped on. White LED cutting through absolute darkness. Soviet-era tunnel, 8 feet wide. Concrete walls stained with decades of seepage. Cyrillic graffiti spray-painted on the walls. Names, dates, 1986, 1987, 1988. The ghosts of young Russian soldiers who'd occupied this same ground 40 years ago. "Clear," she called up. Webb dropped next, landing badly. Ankle turning, he cursed in pain. Callahan lowered Harrison and Brennan together. The two of them came down in a tangle. Brennan groaned as his shoulder hit the tunnel floor. Then Callahan dropped. The big SEAL landed with his rifle up, scanning, professional. Above them, the compound was coming apart. The autocannon fire was relentless now, systematic. They were bringing the whole structure down. "Which way?" Harrison asked. His voice was shaking. The medic was holding up under pressure, but barely. Sloan pulled out her tablet, pulled up the map files from the intelligence packet. Soviet tunnel systems, declassified CIA documents from the 80s. She'd studied them during mission prep while everyone else had slept. "Left fork," she said. "Right leads to an old minefield, still active." Brennan looked at her through pain-dulled eyes. Something like pride flickered there. "You did your homework." "Always do, sir." Sloan took point. "Stay close, stay quiet. These tunnels carry sound for miles." They moved into the darkness, single file, Sloan leading. Then Webb with his hands zip-tied behind his back. Then Harrison supporting Brennan, Callahan bringing up the rear. The tunnels stretched ahead, endless. The only sound was their breathing and the splash of boots in standing water. After 200 meters, the sound of the autocannons faded, replaced by an oppressive silence. The kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums. Webb broke it. "This is pointless. They have thermal drones. They'll track our heat signature." "Not down here," Sloan said. 8 feet of concrete and earth. Thermal imaging can't penetrate this deep." "You hope." "I know." She didn't look back, kept moving. The tunnel sloped downward, water getting deeper, up to their shins now. Brennan stumbled. Harrison caught him. "Colonel, you with me?" "Still here." Brennan's voice was weaker. The blood loss was catching up. Even with the tourniquet, he was running on fumes. "Fletcher, how far to the exit?" Sloan checked the map. 4 clicks, maybe 5. "Can't make that." "You will," Sloan said. Her voice allowed no argument. "Callahan, you take first carry shift. Fireman's carry. We rotate every 500 meters. Chief, he's not negotiable. We don't leave people." Callahan moved up, lifted Brennan across his shoulders. The old colonel weighed maybe 190. Callahan carried him like a rucksack. They kept moving. The tunnel forked, left or right. Sloan consulted the map again. Left, always left. The right tunnels had been used for ammunition storage. Some of them had been deliberately collapsed when the Soviets withdrew. Harrison was struggling. The young medic's breathing was labored. Too fast. Hyperventilating. "Harrison," Sloan said quietly, "control your breathing. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out." "I can't." "Yes, you can. You're doing fine. Focus on the man in front of you, one step at a time." The kid nodded, tried to slow his breathing. Failed, but he kept moving. Webb spoke again, always talking, trying to get under their skin. "You know what's funny, Fletcher? Your father left men behind too. Al-Busaya, February 91. It's in the after-action reports." Sloan didn't take the bait, kept walking. "Sergeant Kyle Brennan," Webb continued, "shot down with your dad. Kyle survived the crash. Your father flew away, left him to the Iraqis." "Webb," Brennan's voice came from Callahan's shoulders, weak but sharp. "Shut your mouth. Truth hurts, doesn't it, Colonel? You trained both of us, me and Fletcher. Both our fathers were—" Sloan stopped walking, spun around, bagged Webb by his zip-tied hands, and slammed him against the tunnel wall, hard enough to crack his head against concrete. "My father's crash site is classified," Sloan said quietly, each word precise as a scalpel cut. "How do you know about Kyle Brennan?" Webb smiled through the pain, blood on his teeth where he'd bitten his tongue. "I know lots of things. That's why I'm valuable. That's why you can't kill me." Sloan wanted to. Her hand moved to her knife, the K-bar on her belt, 7 inches of steel that could solve this problem permanently. Brennan's voice stopped her. "Fletcher, mission first. He's intel value." She released Webb, pushed him forward. "Move." They walked for another hour. The tunnel seemed endless. Sloan's legs burned. The Barrett on her back felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Her plate carrier dug into her shoulders, but she didn't slow down. Behind her, Harrison was making small sounds. Not quite crying, not quite breathing right. "Harrison," Sloan called back. "Status?" "I'm good, Chief, just, it's hot down here." It wasn't hot, it was 60 degrees, maybe cooler. Harrison was going into shock. "Callahan, switch off. Harrison carries the colonel next." "Chief, I don't think—" "That's an order. Harrison needs something to focus on besides his own head." They made the switch. Harrison took Brennan. The physical task helped, gave the young medic something concrete, a mission. Carry the wounded, basic, primal. The tunnel forked again. Sloan checked the map, started to go left, then stopped. Something was wrong. The water on the left fork was stagnant, dead. The right fork had a current, barely perceptible, but moving. "Right," she said. "Map says left," Webb pointed out. "Map's 40 years old. These tunnels flood. The current means this one connects to surface drainage." She went right. The team followed. After 50 meters, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Old Soviet supply room. Rusted metal shelves. Empty ammunition crates with Cyrillic stenciling. And a body. Recent, maybe 3 days dead. Local fighter. A K-47 still clutched in skeletal hands. Bullet hole in the forehead. "Someone else knows about these tunnels," Callahan observed. Sloan knelt by the body, checked the wound. 9mm, suppressed, professional hit. "Cerberus," Brennan said from Harrison's shoulders. "They've been using this infrastructure, our old Cold War sites." Webb laughed. "Bitter. We took over everything, Colonel. Every black site, every forward operating base, every tunnel network you built in the 80s. The company bought them from the CIA. Fire sale prices." Sloan stood, looked at Webb. "The old CIA compound, 4 clicks east. That's where this tunnel leads." "Bingo," Webb's smile was back. "And that's Cerberus headquarters for this region. You're walking into their base. Then we go around." "There is no around. Every exit is monitored. Every tunnel is wired with sensors. You're in a cage, Chief. You just don't know it yet. Harrison made a sound. Not words, just a whimper. He set Brennan down, stumbled to the wall, leaned against it. Harrison? Sloan moved to him. The medic's face was pale, clammy. His pupils were uneven. Left pupil blown wide. Right pupil constricted to a pinpoint. Head trauma. The blast from the claymores had been closer to Harrison than anyone else. The overpressure had rattled his brain. "I can't see right," Harrison said. His voice was small, scared. "Everything's doubled. I'm seeing two of you, Chief." Sloan checked his eyes with her weapon light, shined it directly into his pupils. The left one didn't react, fixed and dilated. Subdural hematoma, brain bleed. He needed surgery, a hospital, an operating room. He needed things they didn't have. "How's your head feel?" Sloan asked gently. "Hurts, like pressure, like my skull's too small." "Can you walk?" "I think so." Sloan looked at Callahan. The big SEAL knew. His face said it all. Harrison was dying. Slowly, but inevitably. "We take shifts carrying him," Sloan said. "He doesn't walk. He conserves energy." "Chief," Callahan started. "Not negotiable." They moved out, Sloan carrying Harrison now. The medic weighed maybe 160. Light, but after 100 meters he felt like lead. Brennan was being carried by Callahan again. Webb walked in the middle. Still zip-tied, still smiling that smile. The tunnel sloped upward. Sloan's thighs burned. Her back screamed, but she didn't stop. Harrison's breathing changed, became irregular. Cheyne-Stokes respiration. The pattern that meant brain death was approaching. "Stay with me, Harrison," Sloan said. "Tell me about home. Where you from?" "Texas." His voice was distant, dreamy. "Lubbock. Flat as a pancake. You can see forever." "What do you miss most?" "My mom's cooking. She makes this chicken fried steak. With gravy. So much gravy." He laughed, wet, bubbling. "Gonna eat whole plate when I get home." "You will," Sloan lied. "First thing when we get stateside. Chicken fried steak." "Promise?" "Promise." Harrison went quiet. His breathing slowed. The pressure in his skull was building, crushing his brainstem. "Chief," his voice was barely a whisper. "I can hear the ocean." "We're in a tunnel, Harrison. No ocean here." "No, I can hear it. Waves like when I went to Galveston. Summer after high school. The waves sound like... He didn't finish. His body went slack, heavy, final. Sloan kept walking, carrying him, because you didn't leave people. You carried them until you couldn't anymore. After 50 meters, Callahan spoke. "Chief, he's gone." "I know. We should leave him. Mark the location. Come back." Sloan stopped, stood there in the darkness, holding the dead weight of a 24-year-old who'd never eat his mother's cooking again. Brennan's voice came from Callahan's shoulders. "Fletcher, he's right. We can't carry the dead. Mission first." Sloan set Harrison down gently, against the tunnel wall, crossed his arms over his chest, took his dog tags. One tag stayed with the body, one tag came with her. She pulled out her GPS unit, marked the coordinates. "We're coming back for you, Harrison. I promise." She stood, didn't look back. If she looked back, she'd break. They kept moving. 3 now. Sloan, Brennan, Callahan, and Webb. The tunnel ended at a ladder, rusted iron rungs set into concrete, leading up to a metal hatch. "That's the exit," Webb said. "Opens into the old CIA compound, now Cerberus HQ. 20 contractors up there, drone operations center, command and control." Sloan looked up at the hatch, then at Brennan. The old colonel was barely conscious. Blood had soaked through the tourniquet. The makeshift bandages were saturated. "We need a vehicle," Sloan said. Medical evac for the colonel. What's the motor pool look like? Webb laughed. You're going to steal a vehicle? From a PMC base? You're going to help us. Why would I do that? Sloan pressed her pistol against Webb's kneecap. Because if you don't, I'll shoot your legs off and leave you here. Then I'll steal it myself. Your choice. The smile faded from Webb's face. He looked at her eyes, saw something there that convinced him. Motor pool is north side, 2 Humvees, 1 MRAP, keys in the ignition. Contractors are lazy, they don't expect infiltration. Security? 1 roving patrol, 2-man team. They rotate every 30 minutes. Sloan checked her watch. 0340 hours. 4 hours until dawn. Callahan, you stay with the colonel. I'm going topside. Negative, Chief. You should keep the colonel alive. That's the mission. She cut the zip ties on Webb's wrists. Webb walks with me. He makes a sound. I cut his throat. She pulled her knife, showed it to Webb. The K-bar blade had seen use. Dark stains that might have been rust. Might have been something else. Understood, Webb said quietly. Sloan climbed the ladder, 20 rungs. Her legs felt like concrete by the 15th. But she made it. Pressed her ear against the hatch. Silence. No footsteps, no voices. She cracked it open. An inch. Moonlight spilled in. Cool air. The smell of diesel and gun oil. They were in a storage building. Old Soviet construction. Concrete block. Metal roof. Shelves stocked with ammunition crates. Modern ones. American manufacturer. Sloan pushed the hatch fully open. Climbed out. Webb followed. The compound was quiet. Floodlights on the perimeter, but the interior was dark. Most of the contractors were sleeping. Third shift crew was minimal. Sloan moved through shadows, Webb behind her, silent. The motor pool was across an open courtyard, 50 meters of exposure. No cover. She waited, watching, patient. 2 contractors walked patrol, just like Webb said. M4 carbines, plate carriers, night vision mounted but flipped up. They were talking, relaxed, not expecting trouble. Sloan waited until they rounded the corner. Then she moved, fast, low, sprinting across the courtyard. Webb struggled to keep up, out of shape, soft. They reached the motor pool, 2 Humvees parked side by side, keys in the ignition, just like Webb said. Sloan checked the fuel gauge. Half tank. Enough. Then she saw the sentry, sitting in the driver's seat of the second Humvee, asleep. Young, maybe 19. Contractor polo shirt. Name tape said Morrison. From Texas, just like Harrison. Sloan's hand moved to her knife. The K-bar whispered out of its sheath. She approached the Humvee, silent, ghost quiet. Morrison's head was tilted back, mouth open, snoring softly. Sloan could kill him, should kill him. 1 quick thrust under the jawline, up into the brain. He'd never wake up. Her hand raised the knife. Then she saw the photo. Taped to the dashboard. Morrison with a younger girl, sister maybe, both of them smiling, normal, happy. The image of Baghdad hit her like a physical blow. The 14-year-old boy with the cell phone, standing on the rooftop, Sloan's crosshairs centered on his chest. Master Sergeant Reed's voice in her ear. Take the shot, Fletcher. He's spotting for the mortar team. But he was just a kid, holding a phone, maybe calling his mother. Sloan had hesitated. 3 seconds, an eternity. The mortar round had landed on Reed's position. Direct hit. When they found him, there wasn't enough left to fill a bag. Reed's last words over the radio. Fletcher, you hesitated. Now she was hesitating again. Knife an inch from Morrison's throat. Webb saw it. You can't do it, he whispered. Can you? That's your weakness, Chief. You see people, not targets. Morrison stirred, eyes fluttering open. Sloan didn't think. She grabbed his head and slammed it into the steering wheel. Hard. Morrison's nose broke with a wet crunch. He slumped forward, unconscious, not dead, but out. "Get in," Sloan hissed at Webb. She started the Humvee. The diesel engine roared to life, loud as thunder in the quiet compound. Lights started flicking on in the barracks. Sloan jammed the transmission into drive, stomped the accelerator. The Humvee lurched forward. Behind her, contractors were pouring out, weapons up, shouting. She drove straight for the storage building, crashed through the courtyard barrier, metal screeching, sparks flying. Callahan was already at the hatch with Brennan. He'd heard the engine. "Load up!" Sloan screamed. Callahan lifted Brennan, threw him into the back seat, jumped in after him. Sloan didn't wait. She floored it. The Humvee fishtailed in the loose gravel, found traction, launched forward. Gunfire erupted. Bullets spanged off the armored hull, shattered the side mirror, spiderwebbed the rear window. But they were moving. Fast. Faster. The main gate was ahead. Closed. Chain link and concertina wire. Sloan didn't slow down. "Brace!" The Humvee hit the gate at 40 miles per hour. The chain link exploded. Wire scraped along the roof, metal screaming. Then they were through, into the open desert. Headlights cutting through darkness. Behind them, the Cerberus compound erupted into chaos. Lights, sirens, engines starting. "They're coming," Webb said. He was gripping the dashboard, face pale. Sloan checked the rearview mirror. 3 sets of headlights, already pursuing. "How far to the relay station?" Sloan shouted back to Callahan. 6 clicks, northwest. "Hang on." The desert floor was washboard rough. Every bump felt like hitting a wall. The Humvee's suspension hammered. Brennan groaned in the back seat. Callahan was trying to stabilize him. "He's bleeding again. The tourniquet shifted." "Fix it." "I'm trying." The pursuing vehicles were gaining. Newer, faster, better maintained. Gunfire, the distinctive thump, thump, thump of a DSHK heavy machine gun. 12.7 millimeter rounds chewed up the desert behind them. Sloan swerved. Hard right, then left. Evasive pattern, unpredictable. A round punched through the tailgate, exited through the roof. Missed Callahan by inches. "Contact rear," Callahan screamed. He grabbed the stolen AK-47 from Harrison's kit, leaned out the window, started firing. The AK barked. Short, controlled bursts. Callahan knew his business. One of the pursuing vehicles swerved, fell back, but 2 more kept coming. The relay station appeared on the horizon. A mesa, flat-topped, a lattice steel tower blinking red lights at the summit. "There," Sloan pointed. The access road was narrow, winding, cut into the side of the mesa. Sloan took it at 50. Too fast. The Humvee's tires screamed. The rear end fishtailed. For a moment they were sliding toward the edge. 1,000-foot drop. Then the tires bit, held, pulled them back. "Jesus Christ, Chief!" Callahan was white-knuckled. Behind them, one of the pursuing vehicles wasn't as lucky. Took the turn too wide, went over the edge, tumbled down the rock face, exploded at the bottom, fireball lighting up the night. One left. The DSHK opened up again. Closer now. The rounds were finding their mark, punching through the Humvee's thin rear armor. Callahan fired back, emptied his magazine, grabbed another. The relay station was ahead, concrete blockhouse, unmanned, automated. Sloan aimed for it, drove straight at it. "Bail out!" She jumped, tucked and rolled, hit the ground hard. Callahan grabbed Brennan, threw him out the passenger side, jumped after. Webb scrambled out just before the Humvee crashed into the blockhouse wall. The impact crumpled the front end. Steam hissed from the destroyed radiator, but it blocked the access road, created a barrier. The pursuing vehicle screeched to a stop. Contractors piled out, taking cover behind their truck. Sloan was already moving. She grabbed Brennan, dragged him toward the blockhouse entrance. Callahan provided suppressing fire. The AK on full auto now, dumping rounds. They got inside, slammed the heavy steel door, through the deadbolt. The blockhouse was small, 20 by 20 feet, banks of servers humming, cooled air, LED lights blinking, and most importantly, a satellite uplink terminal. "Webb," Sloan barked. "Set it up, now." Webb pulled out his laptop, connected it to the server port. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Outside, the contractors were preparing to breach. Sloan could hear them, stacking up, setting charges. "How long?" Sloan asked. 5 minutes to bypass the firewall, 10 to upload, maybe 15 total. They didn't have 15 minutes. "Callahan, watch that door. Anything comes through, you kill it." "Roger that, Chief." Sloan moved to Brennan. The old colonel was barely conscious. His breathing was shallow, rapid. The blood loss was critical now. "Stay with me, sir," Sloan said. "We're almost done." Brennan's eyes fluttered open, focused on her. "Your father would be proud. Save your strength. Need to tell you something about Al Busaya. Later, sir." "After we..." "Fletcher, listen." Brennan grabbed her hand, weak grip. "Your father didn't abandon Kyle Brennan. He was ordered to leave. Direct command." Sloan stared at him. "What?" "Classified, 30-year SEAL, but you deserve to know. Garrett wanted to stay, to fight. They wouldn't let him." "Who wouldn't let him?" "Same people who burned us today. Same chain of command." The laptop beeped. Webb looked up. "I'm in. Uploading now. Progress at 0%. Outside, the contractors set the first breach charge. The explosion rocked the blockhouse. The door held. Barely. "Faster," Sloan said. "Can't rush encryption," Webb shot back. The progress bar crawled. 1%, 2%, another explosion. Bigger. The door buckled, hinges screaming. "Callahan, they're coming through." "I see them." 5%, 6%. The door blew inward. Flashbang rolled in. Sloan closed her eyes, covered her ears. Bang! Even prepared, the blast was disorienting. Her vision whited out. Contractors poured through the breach. 4 of them, weapons up. Callahan opened fire. The AK roared. Close quarters. Deafening. 2 contractors went down. The others dove for cover behind the server racks. Sloan engaged. Her MK-18 spitting suppressed rounds. Professional. Controlled. 1 more contractor dropped. Headshot. The 4th threw a grenade. Sloan saw it, kicked it back through the door. It detonated outside. Someone screamed. 12%, 13%. More contractors at the door. A whole squad now. They called for reinforcements. "We can't hold," Callahan yelled. Sloan checked her magazine. 5 rounds left. She looked at Webb, at the laptop. 18%. Not enough. They'd be overrun before it finished. Then Callahan made his decision. "Chief," his voice was calm, clear. "Take the colonel. Get to the roof. I'll buy you time." "Negative, we fight together. My kids need you to finish this." Callahan pulled a grenade from his vest. "They don't need me to fail." Sloan opened her mouth to argue, but Callahan's eyes stopped her. He'd already decided. Nothing she said would change it. "It's been an honor, petty officer," Sloan said quietly. Callahan grinned, blood on his teeth. "Give 'em hell, Chief." He pulled the pin on the grenade, charged the door, firing the AK one-handed, the grenade in his other hand. "Falcon!" His battle cry echoed. He threw himself into the mass of contractors. The grenade detonated. The explosion was massive. The doorframe collapsed. Fire and smoke billowed. Sloan grabbed the laptop, grabbed Brennan, dragged both toward the service ladder. Webb was already climbing, motivated by survival. 24%, 26%. Sloan climbed one-handed, laptop in one hand, other hand gripping rungs. Brennan was being pulled up by Webb, a miracle. They reached the roof, flat concrete, open sky, the tower blinking above them. Sloan set the laptop down, checked the screen, 32%. Behind her, the blockhouse was burning. Callahan's sacrifice had bought them maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. Brennan was on his back, staring at the stars. Beautiful, he whispered. 40%, 45%. Sloan pulled out her Barrett, set it up, found a firing position. Below, the contractors were regrouping, and behind them, more headlights. Reinforcements arriving. 58%. Come on, Sloan whispered to the laptop. Come on. The files Webb was uploading weren't just intel, they were proof. Operation Palo Duro. The authorization from Vice President Richard Caldwell, the chemical weapons sales, the money transfers, everything. 64%. A helicopter appeared on the horizon, distant but coming closer. Havoc Base, Sloan tried one more time on the radio. This is Falcon 2, emergency traffic. We have critical intel. Requesting immediate extraction. Over. Static. Dead air. She hadn't expected an answer. 72%. The contractors below were setting up a heavy weapon. Mortar tube. They were going to rain fire on this roof. Sloan settled behind the Barrett, found the mortar team through her scope. 800 meters. She made the calculations. Wind, range, angle. Squeezed the trigger. The Barrett roared. The mortarman's head disappeared. 80%, 85%. The helicopter was closer now, close enough to identify. Black Hawk. No markings. 90%. Almost there, Webb said. His voice shook. Almost there. 95%. The Black Hawk was overhead now, rotors beating the air, dust and debris swirling. 100%. Done, Webb screamed. It's uploaded. Everything. 47 recipients. The laptop screen showed the confirmation. Data transmitted successfully. CNN, Washington Post, Guardian, Der Spiegel, WikiLeaks, every major news organization. The truth was out. The world would know. Sloan looked at Brennan. The old colonel smiled. We did it. But the fight wasn't over. Below, the contractors were regrouping, and at the rear of the formation, standing beside a black SUV, was a figure Sloan recognized to her scope. Commander Nathan Graves, Cerberus Field Commander, the man coordinating the assault. Colonel, Sloan said quietly, pulling the Barrett into position. One more shot. Brennan turned his head, saw what she was looking at. How far? Sloan checked the laser rangefinder. 2,430 meters. That's impossible, Brennan coughed. Blood flecked his lips. Wind? 14 knots, left to right, gusting 18. You can't hold steady, not after everything. Sloan settled behind the rifle, looked through the scope. Graves was talking on a satellite phone, directing his men, confident, untouchable. Her hands were shaking. Exhaustion, dehydration, trauma. The crosshairs danced, erratic, jumping across Graves' torso. I can't hold it, Sloan whispered. Brennan crawled over, slowly, painfully, placed his left hand on her shoulder. The right arm hung useless. Then we do it together, he said. Like your father and I. Paktia, 1971. His grip steadied her, not completely, but enough. Elevation 29.2 mils, Brennan whispered. Windage 4.1 left. Spin drift 0.3 right. Sloan dialed the turrets. Click, click, click. Coriolis? She asked. 0.2, Northern Hemisphere. She made the adjustment. The shake was still there, but rhythmic now. Timed to her heartbeat. Thump, jump, thump, jump. Wait for the pause, Brennan said. His voice was fading. Between beats, that's where the shot lives. Sloan exhaled halfway, held. Below, Graves lowered the phone, looked up toward the mesa, like he knew. Thump, wait, thump. Sloan squeezed. The Barrett roared. The muzzle brake vented fire to the sides. The recoil drove into her shoulder like a mule kick. She stayed in the scope, riding it, watching. 1 second. The bullet supersonic, screaming through the night. 2 seconds. Transonic, destabilizing slightly. 3 seconds. Arcing down, falling like a meteor. 4 seconds. Commander Graves' chest disintegrated. The .338 Lapua Magnum round punched through his sternum, exited his spine, threw him backward against the SUV. Pink mist sprayed across the windshield. He dropped. Impact, Sloan breathed. Target down. Below, chaos erupted. Contractors scrambling, panic replacing discipline. Brennan smiled, blood on his teeth. 2,430 meters. That's a record. We did it together, Colonel. No, Brennan's grip on her shoulder loosened. You did it. I just watched. Then the Black Hawk landed, and Sloan's hope died. Because the men who fast roped down weren't friendlies. They were wearing multicam black, no unit patches, no flags, and they were pointing weapons at her. The lead operator's voice boomed through an external speaker. Brennan, Fletcher, drop your weapons, on your knees. Sloan looked at their gear, their movement, the way they stacked. Not rescue, rendition. They weren't here to save anyone. They were here to erase the evidence, to erase her and Brennan, to make sure no one ever testified about what happened in that compound. Sloan's hand moved to her pistol. 7 rounds left. Not enough to fight a helicopter full of operators, but maybe enough to buy one more miracle. She looked at Brennan. The old colonel nodded, understanding passing between them without words. When I move, Brennan whispered, you run. Sir, that's an order, Fletcher. The operators were moving closer, weapons up, 20 seconds from full control. Brennan's hand moved to his sidearm, his left hand. The right arm was useless. Colonel, don't. Too late. Brennan raised his pistol, fired at the operators. They returned fire instantly, professional, overwhelming. 3 rounds hit Brennan, chest, shoulder, neck. He fell. And in that moment, Sloan ran. Sloan didn't think. Thinking got you killed. She sprinted for the edge of the roof. Behind her, the operators were shouting, commands overlapping, radio chatter crackling. Target running, stop her. Bullets sparked off the concrete at her feet, suppressors coughing, 9mm rounds chasing her across the rooftop. The edge was 10 feet away, 8 feet, 6 feet. Below was a 30-foot drop, onto rocks and scrub brush in probable death. But below was also the smoke column, black and thick, rising from Callahan's sacrifice, from the burning blockhouse, a thermal blanket that would blind every sensor the helicopter carried. 4 feet, 2 feet. Sloan jumped. For a moment, she was weightless, suspended between the roof and the ground, between survival and oblivion. The smoke column rose to meet her like a living thing. Then she hit something, corrugated metal, an awning she hadn't seen from above. The metal buckled under her impact, bent but didn't break, absorbed just enough force to keep her spine intact. She rolled, controlled the fall, training overriding terror, dropped the remaining 12 feet to sand and rock. The landing drove the air from her lungs. Her ankle twisted, white-hot pains shot up her leg, but she could move, could run. The smoke swallowed her, thick, choking, blinding. She couldn't see 3 feet, but neither could they. Above her, the helicopter spotlight swept the area. The beam cut through the smoke in shafts, searching, hunting. Visual lost, a voice on external speaker. She went into the fire. Check the perimeter. Sloan crawled, low, fast, Every breath was agony, smoke and heat searing her lungs. But she moved away from the voices, away from the light. She found a crevice, a split in the mesa's base, barely wide enough for a human body. She squeezed inside, pulled a piece of tumbleweed across the opening, pressed herself into absolute stillness. Her entire body screamed, ankle throbbing, ribs probably cracked from the fall, hands bleeding through her gloves from the rough climb down. But she was alive. Above her, the helicopter hovered, spotlights sweeping in patterns, methodical, professional. Negative thermal signature, the voice announced. Fire's too hot, can't distinguish body heat. Keep looking. They searched for 20 minutes. Sloan counted every second. 1,200 seconds of absolute stillness. Not moving, barely breathing. Finally, the radio chatter changed. Bingo, on fuel. We need to return to base. Copy, load the package. Package, Webb. They were taking him. Of course they were. He knew too much, saw too much. He'd either cooperate or disappear into a black site. Probably both. The helicopter's engine pitch changed, increasing power, preparing for liftoff. Through the tumbleweed, Sloan watched it rise. Silhouetted against the stars, banking west, rotors fading to a distant thump, 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 then silence. Real silence, the kind that came after battle, when the smoke cleared and the counting began. Sloan waited another hour, then crawled out of her hiding place. The mesa was a ruin. The blockhouse still smoldered. The Humvee was a burned-out shell. Bodies lay scattered. Contractors in tactical gear, dead from Callahan's last stand. And on the roof, visible even from ground level, a single body. Colonel Vincent Brennan, 65 years old, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Silver Star, dead on a rooftop in a country he'd given 40 years to protect. Sloan limped to the base of the mesa, started to climb. Her ankle made every step torture, but she climbed anyway. Took her 15 minutes to reach the roof. 15 minutes of agony. Brennan lay on his back, eyes open, staring at nothing. 3 entry wounds, chest grouping, professional kill shots. Sloan closed his eyes, took his dog tags, one for the body, one for her. She sat beside him, looked at the stars, the same stars he'd been looking at when he died. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quietly. "I should have stopped you." The wind was the only answer. Cold, indifferent. Sloan checked his pockets, found what she was looking for, a small notebook, weatherproof, the kind SEALs carried for important information. Inside, Brennan's handwriting, coordinates, names, dates, and on the last page a message. "Fletcher, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. Good, you did. Your father's crash site, grid LK449-273, Kuwait Desert, February 26, 1991. His wingman survived. Colonel Marcus Vance, retired, Tucson, Arizona. 2847 Desert Willow Drive. Vance knows what really happened that day, why Garrett was ordered to leave, who gave that order. The same people who burned us today. Finish what your father and I started. Find Vance, get the truth. You're the legacy now, not me. Semper Fi. Hawk Sloan read it twice, memorized the coordinates, the address. Then she tucked the notebook into her vest. She stood, looked down at Brennan one last time. "I'll finish it, Colonel. I promise." The climb down was harder than the climb up. Her ankle was swelling, probably fractured, but she made it. At the base of the mesa, she scavenged, found a canteen on one of the dead contractors, half full. She drank it, all of it. Found a first aid kit, wrapped her ankle, tight compression. It would hold, for a while. Found a radio, encrypted, Cerberus frequency. She smashed it. Didn't want to be tracked. Found a compass, a map, and most importantly, a set of keys. One of the contractor vehicles had survived, a pickup truck, parked 300 meters from the blockhouse, hidden in a ravine. Sloan limped to it, checked the fuel, quarter tank, enough to get somewhere. Anywhere but here. She started the engine, put it in drive, pointed it east, toward the border, toward disappearing. She drove through the night, no lights, using the stars for navigation, the ancient way. As the sun rose, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold, Sloan crossed into what might have been safety, might have been another trap, but she kept driving, because stopping meant dying, and she still had work to do. 3 weeks later, the world had moved on. The leaked files from Operation Palo Duro had caused a firestorm. 24 hours of cable news cycles, congressional hearings announced, Vice President Caldwell's office issuing denials. But then the counteroffensive began. Deep fakes, AI-generated forgeries, foreign disinformation campaigns, the usual playbook. Within a week, the narrative had shifted. Within 2 weeks, most people had stopped paying attention. Within 3 weeks, it was old news. The truth was out there, but it was drowning in noise. Arlington National Cemetery, Virginia. The rain fell in sheets. A crowd gathered around 3 flag-draped coffins, dress blues and umbrellas. Reporters kept at a respectful distance. Vice President Richard Caldwell stood at the podium, gray hair perfect, expression solemn, every inch the grieving leader. "We gather today," he began, his voice carrying across the assembled mourners, "to honor 3 American heroes, Colonel Vincent Brennan, Petty Officer Rhett Callahan, Petty Officer Clay Harrison." The cameras flashed, recording every moment. These men died in service to their country during a training exercise, a tragic helicopter malfunction. They gave everything. He paused. For effect. The silence stretched. We also remember Chief Warrant Officer Sloan Fletcher, lost in the same incident. Though her remains were not recovered, her sacrifice will never be forgotten. 4 coffins, 3 with bodies, 1 empty. A symbolic gesture for a woman the government insisted was dead. Caldwell placed a hand on the first coffin. Brennan's. Colonel Brennan served for 40 years, from the Cold War to the present day. He trained a generation of warriors. His legacy lives on in every SEAL who carries the trident. The second coffin, Callahan's. Petty Officer Callahan left behind a wife and 2 children, a family man, a dedicated operator, gone too soon. The third, Harrison's. Petty Officer Harrison was just beginning his career, 24 years old, the future of the teams. Now that future is lost. The fourth, the empty one, Fletcher's, and Chief Warrant Officer Fletcher, the first female SEAL sniper, a trailblazer, proof that courage knows no gender. We mourn her loss. We honor her memory. Caldwell saluted. The rifle detail fired. 21 guns. The sound echoed across the cemetery. Taps played, mournful, final. The coffins were lowered into the ground, one by one, the earth accepting what remained. The crowd dispersed. Caldwell shook hands, offered condolences to families, posed for photos. The cameras captured it all, the perfect image of a leader honoring the fallen. What the cameras didn't capture was the phone call he made 30 minutes later, from his armored SUV on an encrypted line. "Are we certain?" Caldwell's voice, no longer solemn, hard, clinical. "Negative body recovery," a voice replied, but she went into a thermal event. Fire and smoke. No way she survived the fall. "You're sure?" "As sure as we can be without remains." "That's not sure enough." "Sir, we searched for 6 hours. Thermal imaging, ground teams, nothing. She's dead." Caldwell was silent for a moment. "I want confirmation, real confirmation. Until I see a body, assume she's alive." "Sir, that's an order. Find her, or find proof she's dead. I don't care which, but I want certainty." The line went dead. Caldwell looked out the window. At the rows of white headstones, thousands of them, the honored dead. "Just another name," he muttered to himself. "Just another sacrifice." His phone rang again. Different line. He answered. "The files?" he asked. "Contained," the voice said. "Media's already calling them fakes. Congressional investigation will stall in committee. We have enough votes to bury it." "Good. What about the trail? Any other leaks?" "Webb's cooperating. Gave us everything. The whole network is being rolled up. Clean sweep." "And Webb?" "He'll disappear. Permanently. After we extract everything useful. Make it look natural." "Of course, sir." Caldwell ended the call, settled back into the leather seat. Outside, the rain continued, washing the streets clean. 5,000 miles away, in a dusty cafe on the Arizona-Mexico border, a woman sat in the corner booth. Gray hoodie, sunglasses despite the dim interior, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The television on the wall showed the Arlington funeral. Volume low. Spanish subtitles scrolling across the bottom. The woman watched, expression unreadable behind the dark lenses. On screen, Caldwell placed his hand on the fourth coffin, the empty one. The camera zoomed in, captured the moment. The woman's jaw tightened. Nothing else moved. The cafe owner approached. Older man, kind face. "Más café, señora?" "No, gracias." Her Spanish was flawless. Accent perfect, like she'd grown up speaking it. The owner nodded, started to turn away, then paused. "That funeral, on the television, very sad. American soldiers." "Yes, very sad." "Did you know them?" The woman was silent for a long moment. "I knew one of them, a long time ago." "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." The owner left. The woman continued watching. The funeral ended. The news shifted to other stories. Politics, sports, weather. The woman pulled out a phone. Old model, prepaid, untraceable. She powered it on for the first time in 3 weeks. One message, waiting, from an unknown number. She opened it. Just coordinates. Grid reference. LK449-273. And a single word. "Ready?" The woman typed a reply. One word. "Soon." She deleted the message, powered off the phone, removed the SIM card, broke it in half, dropped the pieces in her cold coffee. Then she pulled out something else. A small package. Brown paper. No return address. It had been delivered to the cafe 2 days ago. Addressed to M. Santos, the fake name she was using. Inside the package, 2 items. First, a set of dog tags, not hers, Colonel Vincent Brennan's. Second, a folded piece of paper. Brennan's handwriting. She'd read it 100 times, but she read it again. "Fletcher, your father's crash site, Kuwait Desert, grid LK449-273. His wingman survived. Colonel Marcus Vance, retired, Tucson, Arizona. Vance knows what really happened. Who gave the order to abandon the crash site, why they left your father to die. The same chain of command that burned us. The same people who are still in power. Find Vance. Get the truth. Finish what we started. You're not dead, Fletcher. You're a ghost. Use that. Semper Fi. Hawk." Below that, Brennan had written an address. 2847 Desert Willow Drive, Tucson, Arizona. And a phone number. Sloan folded the paper, tucked it back into her pocket with the dog tags. She stood, left cash on the table, more than enough to cover the coffee and then some. Walked to the door, paused, looked back at the television one more time. The news was showing file footage now, of her, in dress blues, official portrait, the one they use for promotion boards. Chief Warrant Officer Sloan Fletcher, 28 years old, first female SEAL sniper, killed in action. The woman in the gray hoodie smiled, bitter, cold. "Not yet," she whispered. She pushed through the door, into the harsh Arizona sunlight. The heat hit her like a physical force, but she welcomed it. Heat meant alive. Heat meant moving. Her truck was parked 2 blocks away, dusty, nondescript, stolen plates, everything about it designed to be forgettable. She climbed in, started the engine, pulled out a map, physical, paper, no GPS to track. Tucson was 300 miles north, 6 hours of driving, maybe 7 if she stayed off the interstate. She had time, all the time in the world, because officially she didn't exist anymore. Chief Warrant Officer Sloan Fletcher was dead, buried at Arlington, honored and forgotten. But the woman driving north was very much alive, and she had questions that needed answers. About her father, about Operation Palo Duro, about the chain of command that had sacrificed good men for political expediency, and most importantly, about Vice President Richard Caldwell, the man who'd signed their death warrant, the man who was still in power, still making decisions, still sending men and women to die for lies. Sloan drove. The desert stretched endlessly around her, beautiful and brutal, just like the truth she was hunting. Her ankle throbbed, probably would for months, but it held her weight. That was enough. Her ribs ached with every breath, cracked but not broken. She'd had worse. Her hands were scarred, burns from the rope climb, cuts from the rocks, but they were steady, still capable of the fine motor control needed to make a 2,000-meter shot. She was damaged, but functional. And in her world, functional was all that mattered. As the miles disappeared behind her, Sloan thought about Brennan, about his last words, about the way he'd smiled before he drew his pistol. He'd known he was buying her time, known it would cost him everything. Just like Callahan, just like Harrison, they'd all paid the price, and now she carried that debt. The sun was setting when she reached the outskirts of Tucson, the sky painted in oranges and purples, beautiful, like the sky over Afghanistan had been, the night Brennan died. She found a motel, cash only, no questions. The clerk barely looked at her fake ID. Room 17, ground floor, window facing the parking lot, good sight lines, 2 exits, old habits. She showered, first time in 3 weeks. The water ran brown with dirt and dried blood. She stood under the spray until it ran clear, until her skin was pink and raw. Then she dressed in clean clothes, jeans, t-shirt, flannel jacket, everything purchased from a thrift store with cash. She looked in the mirror, barely recognized herself, hair longer, darker. She dyed it in a gas station bathroom a week ago. Face thinner, harder, eyes that had seen too much. She looked like a ghost, which was appropriate, because that's what she was now, a ghost with unfinished business. She pulled out the paper again, the address, 2847 Desert Willow Drive. Tomorrow. She'd go tomorrow. Find Colonel Vance, ask about her father. About February 26th, 1991, about what really happened that day. But tonight she needed rest, real rest, not the half-sleep of the hunted, not the constant vigilance of someone expecting a bullet. She lay on the bed, stared at the ceiling, tried to quiet her mind, but the faces kept coming. Brennan, Callahan, Harrison, Reed, Morrison, the contractor whose nose she'd broken, the boy in Baghdad with the cell phone. All the people she'd killed, all the people who died because of her choices or her hesitation. The math didn't balance. It never would. She closed her eyes, forced herself to breathe, slow, controlled. Somewhere in Tucson, Colonel Marcus Vance was living his retired life, unaware that his past was about to walk through his door. Somewhere in Washington, Vice President Caldwell was sleeping in his secure residence, protected by Secret Service, insulated by power. And somewhere between them, Sloan Fletcher lay in a cheap motel room, planning her next move. The next step in a war that had already cost too much. But she wasn't done. Not yet, because the mission wasn't over. It had never been over. It had just changed parameters. From direct action to insurgency. From sanctioned operation to personal vendetta. From soldier to ghost. She thought about Brennan's last words. "You're the legacy now." Legacy. What a word. What a weight. Her father had left a legacy. A classified file. A crashed F-18. A mystery. Brennan had left a legacy. A generation of warriors. A notebook full of truths. What legacy would she leave? Sloan didn't know yet, but she knew one thing. She wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. The vice president thought she was dead. Cerberus thought she was dead. The entire United States government thought she was dead. That was her advantage, the only advantage she had, and she was going to use it. Tomorrow, she'd find Vance, get answers about her father. Then she'd decide what came next, who paid next. But tonight, she just needed to survive until morning. One day at a time, one breath at a time, the way Brennan had taught her. The way her father probably would have taught her if he'd lived long enough. Survive, adapt, overcome, the SEAL creed, simple, brutal, true. Sloane's eyes finally closed. Sleep came, fitful, haunted, but it came. And in her dreams she saw them all. Brennan, Callahan, Harrison, her father, standing together, waiting. Not for her to join them, but for her to finish what they'd started. The mission. Always the mission. When Sloane woke, the sun was rising. Another day, another chance. She packed her few belongings, checked out of the motel, paid cash, got in her truck, started the engine, pulled out Brennan's notebook one more time, read the address. 2847 Desert Willow Drive. She entered it into the cheap GPS unit she'd bought, waited for the route to calculate. 17 minutes, 4.3 miles. Close, so close. Sloane put the truck in drive, pulled out of the parking lot, headed north, toward answers, toward truth, toward whatever came next. The radio crackled to life. News report, different station than yesterday. Congressional investigation into the leaked Operation Palo Duro files has stalled. Sources say there's insufficient evidence to proceed. Vice President Caldwell's office has denied all allegations. Sloane turned it off. She didn't need to hear it. She already knew. The truth was out there. But truth alone wasn't enough. Truth needed a witness. Someone willing to testify. Someone with nothing to lose. Someone like her. She drove through the quiet Tucson streets, residential neighborhoods, palm trees, adobe houses, normal people living normal lives, unaware that a ghost was passing through, a ghost carrying the weight of the dead. 2847 Desert Willow Drive was a modest ranch house, single story, well-maintained yard, American flag on the porch. Sloane parked across the street, watched, waited. After 10 minutes, movement. The front door opened. A man stepped out, older, 70 maybe, gray hair, weathered face, moving with the careful precision of someone whose body had taken damage and learned to compensate. Military bearing, even in retirement, you could always tell. Colonel Marcus Vance. He walked to his mailbox, collected his mail, paused, looked directly at Sloane's truck. For a moment, they made eye contact. Across the street, across 35 years. Vance didn't look surprised. He looked expectant, like he'd been waiting. He gestured, a small motion. "Come inside." Sloane's hand moved to the pistol in her waistband. Old habits. But she got out of the truck anyway, walked across the street, slow, non-threatening, hands visible. Vance waited on his porch, studying her. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "You look like him," Vance said quietly. "Like Garrett, Same eyes. Sloan stopped at the base of the steps. Colonel Vance? Just Vance now. Been 20 years since anyone called me Colonel. He smiled, sad. You're Sloan, aren't you? Garrett's daughter. How did you? Brennan sent me a message 3 weeks ago. Said you might be coming. Said you'd have questions. Vance's smile faded. Said he might not make it to answer them himself. He didn't. Vance nodded, like he'd expected that too. Come inside, we have a lot to talk about, and not much time. Why not much time? Vance glanced at the street, at the normal suburban quiet. Because the same people who killed your father are still in power. And if they know you're alive, they'll come for you. For me. For anyone who knows the truth. He turned, walked inside, left the door open. An invitation or a trap. Sloan had to choose. Walk through that door, into the unknown, into answers that might destroy everything she thought she knew. Or walk away, stay a ghost, survive. She thought about Brennan's words, finish what we started. She thought about her father, a name on a wall, a classified file, a mystery. She thought about Callahan and Harrison, about the empty coffins at Arlington. Then she walked up the steps, through the door, into whatever came next. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and old books. Vance led her to a small study, maps on the walls, military memorabilia, a framed photo of 2 FA-18s in formation. That's us, Vance said, pointing. February 25th, 91, day before the mission. Sloan looked closer. 2 pilots, young, confident. One of them had her eyes. My father, she whispered. Garrett Fletcher, best wingman I ever had. Vance sat heavily in a leather chair, gestured to another. Sit. This is going to take a while. Sloan sat, but didn't relax. Her hand stayed near her pistol. Vance noticed, smiled sadly. If I wanted you dead, I'd have called Caldwell's people before you arrived. Thermal cameras on every street corner in this neighborhood. I've been watching you since you crossed the Arizona border. Then why didn't you? Because Garrett saved my life, and I've been carrying the guilt of what happened next for 35 years. Vance opened a desk drawer, pulled out a file folder, classified markings, red stripe. This is why they left him to die, why they ordered him to abandon the crash site, why they're willing to kill you now. He slid the folder across the desk. Sloan opened it, read the first page. Her hands started shaking. Operation Desert Shield, February 26, 1991. Pilot, Captain Garrett Fletcher. Wingman, Captain Marcus Vance. Mission, reconnaissance of suspected Iraqi chemical weapons facility. She kept reading, the words blurred, then focused. We found the facility, Vance said quietly, but it wasn't Iraqi. It was American contractors, selling VX nerve agent to Saddam's Republican Guard. For profit. Sloan looked up. Caldwell. He was CIA back then, running the operation. When we radioed in what we'd seen, he ordered us shot down, made it look like Iraqi air defense. But you survived. Garrett ejected first, took the brunt of the SAM impact. I landed 2 clicks away. Iraqis got to him before I could. Vance's voice cracked. I heard him on the radio, calling for extraction, calling for me. Then, nothing. Sloan closed the file. Her father hadn't abandoned anyone. He'd been the one abandoned. Why didn't you expose this? I tried. For 20 years I tried. But Caldwell buried it, classified, national security. Anyone who pushed got reassigned. Or worse. Vance looked at her. Then Brennan contacted me. Said his student was asking questions. Said if anything happened to him, I should tell you everything. He knew he'd die. He knew the cost of fighting people like Caldwell. So did your father. So did I. Vance stood, walked to the window. But you're different, Fletcher. You're dead, officially. That makes you dangerous. Sloan stood, tucked the file into her jacket. What are you going to do? Disappear, like I should have done 30 years ago. Vance turned, extended his hand. But first, I'm going to testify. Congress, media, whoever will listen. Brennan uploaded the files. I'll provide the witness testimony. They shook hands, across generations, across decades of lies. Thank you, Sloan said. Don't thank me. Finish what your father started, what Brennan died for. Vance walked her to the door. And Fletcher, when you go after Caldwell, make it count. Sloan stepped onto the porch. The suburban street looked the same, normal, peaceful, but everything had changed. She had the truth, the files, the witness, and she had nothing left to lose. She walked to her truck, started the engine, pulled out the notebook one more time, read the coordinates, grid LK449-273, Kuwait Desert, her father's crash site. Not just answers anymore, a pilgrimage. She pointed the truck south, toward the border, toward the next mission. Because the war wasn't over, it had just begun. And somewhere in Washington, Vice President Richard Caldwell received a phone call. Sir, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Fletcher, we have thermal imaging from a traffic camera in Tucson. Facial recognition, 92% match. Silence. Then, she's alive. It appears so, sir. Where is she now? Lost track after the initial hit, but we're scanning all feeds. We'll find her. Find her and end this, permanently. I don't care what it costs. Yes, sir. The line went dead. The hunt was on, but this time, the prey was hunting back. And Chief Warrant Officer Sloan Fletcher had become something the Vice President hadn't planned for. Not a soldier following orders, not a patriot defending her country, but a ghost with nothing to lose. And ghosts were hard to kill because they were already dead.